stepped out of her car and looked at the house. 3 stories tall, white paint peeling in long strips, windows dark and empty. The afternoon sun was low and made everything look older than it was. She had not been back here in 15 years. Her grandmother's will had brought her back, along with the deed to this place and all the questions that came with it. The graveyard next door was the first thing people noticed about the property. 2 acres of old stones, some dating back to the 1700s, arranged in neat rows under oak trees that had grown so tall their branches blocked out the sky. Had played in that graveyard as a child, reading names on headstones, making up stories about the people buried there. Now, as an adult, the sight of it gave her an odd feeling. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. Like something important was waiting here for her to remember it. She was an architect. She had spent the last decade designing office buildings and apartment complexes in Boston. This house, though, was different. This was about restoration, about bringing something dead back to life. Her grandmother had left detailed instructions that the house be preserved in its original style, kept as it had been built in 1887. Unusual request for someone who had lived so far away that her connection to the place had become mostly financial. Pulled her measuring tape and notebook from her car. The evening was cool. Leaves crunched under her boots as she walked toward the front door. The key turned hard in the lock as if it had not been used in years. Inside, the air smelled like dust and time. Light came through the windows in thick rays, showing particles floating like small bugs. The first floor was mostly empty. A few pieces of furniture covered with white sheets stood in the rooms like sleeping ghosts. Kitchen with an old stove, dining room with a long table, living room with a fireplace. Everything was exactly how she remembered it from childhood visits, except smaller. That was how childhood homes always felt when you came back as an adult. She climbed the stairs to the second floor. The wood creaked under her weight. Her footsteps sounded loud in the quiet house. There were 4 bedrooms on this level, all empty now. The master bedroom was at the end of the hall. Large windows faced the graveyard. She could see the stones from here, gray and white in the fading light. That was when she noticed something odd. Had brought the original architectural plans with her, documents she had found in her grandmother's files. As she stood in the master bedroom, she held them up and looked at the walls. According to the plans, there should be a closet on the eastern wall. She walked over and found the closet. Small, normal, but something was wrong. She measured the exterior wall from outside on the plans, 42 feet. Then she measured the interior wall distance, 37 feet, a difference of 5 feet, 5 feet of space that should not exist. Pulled out her notebook and wrote down the measurements. She double-checked them. Same result. There was a wall somewhere that the plans did not show, or the wall had been moved, or a room had been filled in. Her architect's mind began to work through the possibilities, each one more interesting than the last. She went to the other bedrooms and measured them too. They all matched the plans. The discrepancy was only in the master bedroom. She spent the next 2 hours examining every inch of that room. The walls looked solid. The plaster was old, maybe original, no obvious signs of recent work. But the math did not lie. There was hidden space in this house. That night drove to the local hardware store and rented a thermal imaging camera. She had friends in the construction business who used this equipment all the time. The store owner, an old man named George, recognized her immediately even though he had not seen her in years. He said, smiling, "Heard you inherited old Sarah's place. That's a good house. Your great-grandfather built it solid, built everything in this town solid actually. Did all the fine work before he got strange." Strange asked. George shrugged. Just stories. He kept to himself a lot, spent all his time in that house toward the end, boarded up rooms, installed special locks and doors that nobody could figure out. People thought maybe he lost his mind. Old money sometimes does that to people, makes them paranoid. Thought about this as she drove back to the house. Strange, paranoid, boarded up rooms. That did not match what she knew about her great-grandfather from the few stories her grandmother had told. He was supposed to be smart, a builder, a man with vision. In the master bedroom, she turned on the thermal imaging camera. The screen showed the room in shades of blue and red, heat and cold. She pointed it at the closet wall. The image appeared normal at first. Then she saw it. A rectangular outline where the temperature was slightly different. A perfect rectangle about 3 feet wide and 7 feet tall, hidden behind the closet wall itself. The space behind the wall was cold, much colder than the rest of the bedroom, as if it had been sealed for a long time and the air inside was trapped, undisturbed. His heart beat faster. She had been an architect for 10 years. She had never found anything like this. Never discovered a room that someone had deliberately hidden and sealed away. She thought about her great-grandfather, about the stories of strange behavior, about a man who had built this house with his own hands and then sealed something inside it. She spent the next 2 days carefully removing the old closet. She worked slowly, saving every nail and board. A contractor's work, not a demolition. By the evening of the second day, she had exposed the original wall behind the closet. Old wood, not original to the house, she thought. Newer, maybe installed in the 1890s or early 1900s. There was a seam, a line where the wall met the rest of the plaster. She ran her fingers along it. Dust came away on her hands, old dust, the kind that had been undisturbed for decades. She took a hammer and gently tapped. The sound was hollow. Began to remove the plaster around the seam. It came away in pieces, powder that made her cough. As she worked, she could see the outline of something beneath. Wood, a frame, a door. By midnight, she had exposed it completely. A wooden door, painted dark blue or black, so old and covered in dust that it looked almost purple. No handle, no lock. Just a door that someone had deliberately sealed behind a wall and then hidden that wall behind a closet. Sat back on her heels and looked at what she had found. Her hands were dirty, her back hurt. Her mind was moving very fast, asking questions she did not have answers to. She thought about her great-grandfather, about a man building a secret room in his own house, about a man who had felt the need it took 3 days to open the door. She did not use tools to break it down. That was the architect in her. She wanted to preserve the space, to understand how it had been sealed rather than destroy it. She found the mechanism finally by examining the frame from outside. A simple lock system, operated from the closet side, hidden by plaster and decades of forgetting. The door swung open with a sound like a sigh. Inside was another world. A room about 15 feet by 20 feet, the walls lined with shelves that held objects she could not name. Books, journals, glass containers with things inside that looked like crystals but were not quite right. The room was dry, perfectly preserved, kept at an even temperature by some system she did not understand and would not find anywhere in the house. Stood in the doorway and did not move for a long time. The walls were covered in writing, not paint, actual writing done with ink on the plaster itself, numbers and symbols and words in her great-grandfather's handwriting. She recognized it from the documents she had seen, the same hand that had signed the architectural plans for this house. The same careful, precise writing of a man who understood measurements and proportions and how to build things that lasted. Along the western wall, someone had painted a map of the night sky, but not the night sky as it was. This showed planets and stars in positions that did not match anything she knew. It showed orbits. It showed mathematical relationships marked in red ink. It showed calculations that made her head hurt to look at. Walked deeper into the room. Her fingers trailed along the shelves without touching anything. These were protected, preserved, kept safe by someone who understood that they were important. She found the journals stacked on the main shelf, 7 of them, bound in leather that was soft with age. The first one was dated 1889. The last one was dated 1923. 34 years of writing, of documenting something that had consumed her great-grandfather's life. She opened the first journal. The handwriting was different here, younger, more excited, less careful. First contact was not what I expected. The being was small, no more than 4 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift between colors like oil on water. It spoke in a way that was not words but meaning. Understanding appeared in my mind without the need for language. It was, in a word, impossible. And yet the being stood before me in my workshop at 3 in the morning, and I could not deny what I was seeing. They are called something in their own speech, but the closest approximation in English is the Watchers. They have been observing Earth for a long time, centuries, perhaps longer. They believe that humanity has reached a critical point. We have weapons now. We have the ability to destroy ourselves, and we are divided in ways that make such destruction likely. The being offered knowledge, technology, a way forward that would prevent the catastrophes it could see coming. But it asked something in return. It asked for sanctuary, for protection, for a place where members of their species could wait and observe and record the choices that humanity would make. I told the being that I would need to think about this. It left the same way it came, and I have not slept since. Read through the night. She read about secret meetings in the workshop. She read about negotiations that her great-grandfather conducted with a being that came from the stars. She read about the being explaining what the Watchers had done throughout human history. how they had prevented certain wars, how they had guided leaders toward better choices, how they had interfered in ways small enough to not be noticed but large enough to change the course of history. And she read about the choice her great-grandfather had made. He could have exposed them, he could have told the world, it would have made him famous, it would have changed everything. Instead, he agreed to help them. He built this room, he sealed it. He created a sanctuary hidden in the walls of his own house, a place where the Watchers could store their records, a place where they could maintain their observation equipment, a place safe from the eyes of a world that was not ready for the truth. If I reveal this now, she read in the later journals, humanity will fracture, the governments will go to war over access to the knowledge, the religions will declare this a hoax or a curse, the people will be afraid. The Watchers have shown me the probability patterns. They have shown me what would happen if the truth came out now. Millions would die, perhaps billions. But if humanity is left to develop on its own, guided gently by the Watcher's invisible hand, then in perhaps 100 years or more we will be ready. We will be mature enough, wise enough. We will have seen enough conflict and death to understand that we do not want to repeat those patterns. I have made my choice. I will protect this secret. I will keep this sanctuary safe. And I will hope that one day my descendants will have the wisdom to understand what I have done and why I did it. Found the objects then, she opened the glass containers with careful hands. The crystals inside seemed to change color depending on how the light hit them. They were not crystals. They were something else. Technology, maybe, or something that existed between technology and science that humans did not yet have words for. There were diagrams of how the observation equipment worked. There were records going back 50 years before her great-grandfather, showing that the Watchers had been watching Earth even longer than she had thought. There were medical records of some kind, detailed anatomical drawings of the being that had made contact with her great-grandfather. Drawings that showed something that was beautiful and terrible at the same time. And there was a device, about the size of a radio or perhaps something older. It sat on a table by itself, covered in symbols and patterns. There were switches and dials and things that might have been buttons or might have been something else entirely. Recognized the symbols. They matched the writing on the walls. They matched the writing in the journals. Spent a week in the hidden room. She read every journal. She examined every object. She studied the astronomical charts and tried to understand the mathematics written on the walls. She did not leave the house except to buy food and water. She slept in the room sometimes, curled up on the floor beside the device. The device called to her in a way she could not explain. It was not like the device was alive. It was not broadcasting emotions or thoughts. But there was something about it that seemed to want her attention. She found herself drawn to it again and again. She would sit beside it for hours and just look at the symbols, trying to understand their meaning. On the 8th day, she touched it. Her hand moved almost without her thinking about it. She ran her fingers across the surface of the device, feeling the texture of it. Under her touch, one of the symbols began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, a pale blue light that filled the room. Jumped back. The light faded but did not go out completely. It stayed, a soft glow that illuminated the entire hidden space. She could see everything clearly now, every detail, every corner. She noticed for the first time that there was a small screen on the side of the device, dark, not showing anything. She waited, nothing else happened. Hours passed. She sat in the room and waited. The light stayed constant. She began to think that perhaps the device was simply powered now. Perhaps her touch had activated it in the way that a light switch activates a light, nothing more. Then the screen flickered. Images appeared. At first they were random, colors and shapes that did not form into anything recognizable. Then slowly they resolved. They showed a view of space, stars, a planet in the distance. A curved line of something she did not understand, like a station or a structure. A voice came next, not from the device speakers, from inside her mind. The same way the voice had appeared in her great-grandfather's mind when the Watchers made first contact. Understanding without words, meaning without language. "Greetings, we have been waiting for you." Tried to speak. Her mouth moved but no sound came out. The voice continued. "You have found what we left for you. Your great-grandfather understood his role. He was the bridge between our people and yours. For 34 years, he helped us understand humanity. He kept our presence secret. He kept our sanctuary safe. He did this because he believed that humanity would one day be ready to know the truth. We believe that time is approaching." Found her voice. "Who are you?" The words came out as a whisper. We are the Watchers. We have been observing your species for longer than your current civilization has existed. We have watched you build and destroy, create and murder, love and hate. We have seen your potential and your dangers, and we have chosen to guide you gently away from the path of extinction. Why asked? Because we are not so different from you, though our bodies are different, and our minds work in ways your science does not yet understand. We also struggle with the choice between what is right and what is easy. We also wrestle with the burden of knowledge and power. And we understand that any species that survives long enough to reach the stars must first survive its own nature. It must learn to choose mercy over revenge, cooperation over conquest, truth over comfortable lies. Images filled the screen, saw them now moving images. She saw a city far away, not on Earth. She saw structures that human architecture. She saw beings moving through vast open spaces, and she understood that they were the Watchers. Small creatures, almost delicate, with skin that caught light in strange ways. How many of you have been here? Asked. Only our observation equipment remains on Earth now. The members of our species who made first contact with your great-grandfather have long since returned to our. We have maintained a watching station disguised as a natural phenomenon in your planet's upper atmosphere. From there, we have observed you, recorded your progress, guided you when we could. Guided us how? In small ways. We prevented an accident that would have destroyed your first nuclear reactor. We inspired certain leaders to make choices that prevented war. We ensured that treaties of peace were signed rather than forgotten. We did this without you knowing because revelation would have caused chaos. Humanity, we discovered, cannot accept knowledge of the existence of others without first accepting the limitations of your own understanding. Looked at the images of the Watchers. They did not look evil. They did not look hostile. They looked curious, intelligent, alien in every sense of the word, but not hostile. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Because your species has reached another critical moment. Your wars have not destroyed you yet, but they grow more dangerous. Your weapons become more capable of annihilation with each year, and your divisions still tear at you from the inside. We must decide whether to continue our guidance in secret or to trust humanity with the truth and allow you to choose your own path forward. And what do you want me to do? Whispered. Your great-grandfather chose to keep our presence secret. We respected that choice. It saved your species from immediate chaos. But now we believe that humanity is ready. We believe that you are ready. We have monitored your mind. We have analyzed your choices. You are the descendant of the man who first understood our purpose. You carry his legacy in your blood and his wisdom in your thoughts. The device screen went dark. We are asking you to make a choice, just as your great-grandfather made a choice 134 years ago. You can seal this room again, you can keep our presence secret, and we will continue to guide your species in silence, or you can step forward. You can tell your world what you have found. You can prepare your species for the truth. And if I choose to reveal you, asked, what happens then? Then we will negotiate with your world's governments and leaders. We will offer knowledge and partnership. We will ask that humanity continue its development without the hidden hand of our guidance. You will be free to choose your own path, even if that path leads to destruction. Sat in the silence of the hidden room. Outside, night had fallen. She could see through the small window that faced the master bedroom that the stars were beginning to appear. She thought about her great-grandfather. She thought about a man who had made a choice that echoed through a century. She thought about the burden he had carried and the burden she now carried. I need time, she said, to understand this, to think about what it means. Did not leave the house for 2 weeks after the device activated. She moved between the hidden room and the rest of the house like a ghost, sleeping little, eating less. She read the journals again and again, searching for answers that her great-grandfather might have found. She studied the objects on the shelves until she could describe every detail from memory. She examined the mathematical formulas on the walls and tried to understand their meaning. But mostly she sat and thought. The choice in front of her was not a simple one. She understood that immediately. This was not a choice between right and wrong. It was a choice between different kinds of right, different kinds of wrong, different kinds of consequence. If she kept the secret, humanity would be left in the dark. The Watchers would continue their hidden guidance. Thousands of years of conflict might be prevented by invisible hands. But it would also mean that humanity would never know the truth. It would never have the chance to make its own choices about its future. It would live under the guidance of beings it did not know existed, shaped by decisions it did not understand. If she revealed the truth, everything would change. Governments would demand to meet the Watchers. Religions would fracture under the weight of knowing that humanity was not alone in the universe. Some people would feel saved by the revelation. Others would feel betrayed that they had been guided without their knowledge. There would be fear. There would be conflict. There might be war. And there might also be growth, understanding, the possibility of a future where humanity made its own choices with full knowledge of the consequences. Called Dr. Henry Park on a Tuesday morning. She had known him for 5 years through her work with the university's architecture department. He was a physicist brilliant in ways that made most people uncomfortable. He asked questions that had no easy answers, and he was someone she trusted. "Can we meet?" she asked. "I need your help with something important." They met in a coffee shop in the center of town, far from the house with its secrets. Did not tell him everything. She told him that she had found historical documents in her family's collection, documents that suggested advanced knowledge being held and hidden in the 19th century, documents that suggested impossible things. "Show me," he said. That was the hardest part, taking him to the hidden room, watching his face as he understood what he was seeing. His skepticism changed to confusion, then to wonder, then to fear. He read through the journals. He examined the objects. He looked at the astronomical charts and the mathematical formulas on the walls. "This is real," he said finally. "These calculations are real. This mathematics is describing things we only theorized about in the last 30 years. Your great-grandfather could not have known this. He could not have calculated this. Someone taught him." "Yes," said. Henry sat down hard on the floor. "This will end civilization as we know it," he said. "Maybe," said, "or maybe it will force us to become what we could be, what we should be." She also called the journalist. She did not call him to the house. Instead, she gave him documents, copies of the journals, copies of the architectural plans that showed the discrepancy. She gave him evidence that something was hidden, that something had been deliberately sealed away, that something was important enough to keep secret for more than a century. "What is this?" asked when they met. "The biggest story of your life," said, "if you're willing to tell it responsibly, if you're willing to be careful with it." Was a careful man. He did not publish stories without verification. He did not make claims he could not support. He spent 3 weeks investigating. He went to the library and pulled old records. He interviewed historians and people whose families had lived in the town for generations. He found the diary entries his own grandfather had written about his great-grandfather. Strange man, kept to himself. Built walls and sealed doors, never explained why. "I need to see the room," said. Brought him to the house. She showed him the hidden space. She showed him the device. She explained everything that she had not explained to Henry. She told him about the Watchers, about the guidance that humanity did not know it was receiving, about the choice that had to be made. "This is true," said when she finished. "I can feel that this is true, but I also know that people will not believe it without proof that I cannot provide. A video, actual contact, something undeniable." "We will have that," said. "The Watchers said they would negotiate with the governments of the world once the truth was revealed. That will be our proof." Over the next month, the 3 of them prepared. Henry analyzed the science, he the mathematics. He checked the claims made in the journals against current astronomical knowledge and found them to be accurate in ways that should have been impossible. Prepared the documents for publication. He created a timeline that showed how humanity's history might have been influenced by the Watcher's guidance. Kept the device activated. She maintained contact with the entity that spoke for the Watchers. One night, alone in the graveyard beside the house, made her final decision. The stones around her were old. Some were more than 200 years old. They marked the places where people had been buried, where their lives had ended, where they had been remembered by those who came after them. She thought about all those people. She thought about all the choices they had made, all the lives they had lived, all the love and hate and fear and hope that had filled their days. Her great-grandfather was buried here somewhere, his grave unmarked now, his secret kept so well that no one even remembered him. "I choose to tell the truth," she said to the night air. "I choose to trust that humanity is ready. I choose to let us make our own decisions about our future." She felt something shift in the air around her. Not physical, something deeper than that, a sense of rightness, of inevitability, of a choice that had been waiting to be made for a very long time. Went back to the house and activated the communication device one more time. She told the Watchers of her decision. She asked them to prepare for first contact. She asked them to be ready to reveal themselves to the world. She asked them to give humanity the chance to meet the beings who had been guiding them in secret for so long. The device glowed. The voice appeared in her mind one final time. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning, not through any single government, not through any single news organization. It came through all of them at once, coordinated across every platform that humanity used to communicate. Television, radio, internet, and direct broadcasts to every scientific institution on Earth. Stood in a small room with Henry Park, and in front of them was a camera and a microphone. In the hidden room below, the communication device was active, broadcasting to the world. "My name is," she said to the camera, speaking clearly, her voice steady. "I am an architect. I'm also the great-granddaughter of a man who made contact with an extraterrestrial species in the year 1889. I have spent the last month verifying that contact. I have found evidence. I have found documentation, and today I am here to tell you that we are not alone." She explained about her great-grandfather. She explained about the secret room. She explained about the journals and the objects and the mathematics written on the walls. She provided the evidence. She showed the photographs. She demonstrated the astronomical calculations and proved they were accurate. Then Henry Park spoke. He explained the science. He explained how her great-grandfather could not possibly have known these things in 1889. He explained how the technology in the hidden room did not match anything that existed in the 19th century. He every claim that could be through scientific analysis. Then he explained the history. He showed how certain key moments in human history aligned with what the Watchers had said they influenced. He showed the probability of those moments happening by chance and showed how unlikely that probability was. He traced the threads through history and showed how they connected to a pattern that could not be coincidence. And then the Watchers spoke. The communication device broadcast directly. Millions of scientists around the world in laboratories and universities and research centers heard the voice at the same moment. Not words, meaning, understanding, the direct transmission of information from an alien intelligence to humanity. They introduced themselves. They explained their purpose. They explained that they had been watching Earth for thousands of years. They explained how they had guided humanity away from extinction multiple times. They explained that they had done this because they believed humanity had the potential to become something great, not through force, not through conquest, but through the capacity to choose peace even when peace was difficult. They offered proof. They described astronomical phenomena that they had observed and that human science would later verify. They described historical events with details that only someone present at those events could possibly know. They offered to open negotiations with Earth's governments. The reaction was chaos, beautiful, terrifying, transformative chaos. Some people celebrated. They felt validated in their belief that humanity was not alone. They felt hope that a greater civilization could help humanity solve its own problems. Others were frightened. They feared that the revelation of the Watchers meant that humanity had been deceived, that humanity's history had been written by outside hands, that humanity was nothing more than a puppet with invisible strings. Governments reacted. The United Nations convened emergency sessions. Military forces were put on alert. Scientists demanded more information. Religious leaders offered varied interpretations of what the revelation meant for their faith. Some said it was a test. Some said it was an abomination. Some said it was divine providence in a different form than they had expected. Became the center of it all. She was humanity's connection to the Watchers. She was the bridge between two species. Within a week, she was speaking to world leaders. Within a month, she was part of the official diplomatic corps that would negotiate with the Watchers. The process was slow. The negotiations were complex, but gradually a new understanding emerged. The Watchers were not gods. They were not here to rule humanity or control it or replace it. They were simply beings with technology and knowledge that was slightly ahead of humanity's own. They had interfered because they cared about the survival of a species that they found fascinating. But they were willing to stop that interference if humanity wanted to move forward on its own terms. What they offered instead was partnership, knowledge shared freely, technology offered without control or obligation, a place for humanity in a larger community of species that inhabited the galaxy. Not everyone was happy with this. Some governments wanted to capture the Watchers' technology. Some religions rejected the entire framework of the revelation. Some people simply could not accept that humanity had been guided without its knowledge. But the majority of people, given time to adjust and understand, saw something different. They saw that they had been protected. They saw that they had been given a chance to develop on their own while being guided away from self-destruction. They saw that the Watchers were offering partnership, not dominion. 1 year after the revelation, the first formal treaty was signed. The Watchers would maintain their observation station, but with full transparency. They would share their knowledge with humanity's scientists. They would allow human representatives to travel to there. They would become partners in exploration and understanding rather than secret guides. 2 years after the revelation, human scientists, working with information provided by the Watchers, achieved breakthroughs in energy production, medical treatment, and space travel. The first human ship, built with some assistance from Watcher technology, left Earth orbit, stood in the control center and watched it go. Henry Park was aboard, sent as humanity's scientific representative to the Watcher. 5 years after the revelation, the hidden room became a museum. Oversaw the restoration. She made sure every object was preserved. She made sure every journal was protected. She created a space where people could come and understand what her great-grandfather had done and why he had done it. On the anniversary of the first contact, stood in the graveyard beside her house. The house was no longer hers. It had been purchased by the government to house the museum and the diplomatic offices that coordinated humanity's relationship with the Watchers. But the graveyard was still quiet. The old stones still marked the passing of generations. She walked to her great-grandfather's grave, its location finally known through careful research and family records. She placed flowers there and spoke to the ground. "You made the right choice," she said. "You protected us when we needed protection. You waited until we were ready. I have done what you did, but in reverse. I have removed the protection and given us the chance to know ourselves." The sun was setting. The sky was turning shades of orange and red. Somewhere above, the Watcher's observation station orbited silently, now openly rather than hidden. Humanity's childhood was ending. The species was growing up. And like all children growing up, humanity would make mistakes. Humanity would make bad choices. But humanity would make them as a free species with open eyes, knowing that it was not alone and that it had allies in the universe. Thought about what came next, about the future that stretched ahead of humanity, about the possibilities that had opened with the revelation. She thought about her great-grandfather and the burden he had carried. She thought about how that burden had become her own and then had been shared with the world. And she thought about how sometimes the greatest strength of humanity was not in its weapons, or its intelligence, or its technology. It was in the courage to face the truth, even when that truth was strange and frightening and impossible to understand. The graveyard was beautiful in the fading light. The stones seemed to glow softly, as if celebrating the moment. And standing among the dead of her family and her town felt something like peace. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in human history, humanity would face that uncertain future with its eyes open and with friends looking back at them from the stars. "We are grateful," it said. "Your great-grandfather would be proud of the choice you have made. But be warned, the path ahead will not be easy. Humanity will resist. Humanity will fear. Humanity will question everything you tell them." "I know," said, "but they deserve the chance to know the truth, even if the truth is hard." "Then let us show them," the voice said. "Let us show them that they are not alone." "You will have time," the voice said. "We will wait. We have been waiting for 134 years. We can wait longer." The light on the device faded. The screen went dark, and was alone again in the hidden room, but she was not alone at all. Above her, disguised in the upper atmosphere, the Watchers observed. They waited. They hoped. And they had finally, after more than a century of silence, passed the burden of choice to another human being. She touched it carefully. Nothing happened. It seemed dormant, waiting. Sat down on the floor of the hidden room and let herself cry. Not because she was afraid. Not because she did not understand, but because she understood too well. She held in her hands the proof of something that would change everything if it became known. She held the burden that her great-grandfather had carried alone for over 30 years. The burden that was now hers. To hide something so carefully that it had stayed hidden for over a century. She reached out and pushed on the wooden door. It did not move. It was sealed tight from the outside at least. Whatever was behind that door had been waiting here for a very long time, waiting for someone to find it, waiting for her. Sat there in the darkness of the master bedroom, dust on her clothes and questions in her mind, and she understood that everything was about to change.